Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Some really exciting stuff to talk about today. First, we've got a Bradley Beal comment about potentially teaming up with other superstars, something we've talked about in the past that, yeah, it looks like it might actually be happening at Team USA practices. And we're also going to talk about the Detroit Pistons potentially moving the #1 overall pick in the draft. Keith, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, and hey, I'll do it today. Guys, subscribe to the video. Hit that subscribe button. We passed 3,000. We're
That's
feeling
right.
good about that, so thank you for all the support there. And make sure you like the video as well. Feel free to comment and share your thoughts, all those things, and hit that notification so you know when new videos come out. So how'd I do? Did I do all right with
That
that?
was fantastic. I love it. I love it. And
Like a
that's and
pro.
and absolutely, guys, we are so blown away by all the support that we've gotten here on this channel and how quickly that we're growing. It's just amazing and really just makes us feel great about all the stuff that we're doing out here. So again, appreciate everybody for all the support that we've gotten for this NBA Front Office YouTube channel. But we've got, before we dive into the #1 pick, we've got Bradley Beal making a little comment about how he thinks that, yeah, people are going to talk at Team USA camp about potentially teaming up in the future, which is kind of how super teams are formed. Like, so take this Team USA roster, take a look at all the guys that are on it, and just kind of make a mental note, because you know what always ends up happening. They have so much fun playing together that then they start saying, hey, we should figure out a way to actually play together in the NBA. I mean, that's how the Miami Heat Big Three was formed. So never know where this is going to go from here.
Yeah, absolutely. What the exact quote from
Yeah.
Bradley Beal was when he was asked, is this a breeding ground? I believe was how it was put for super team conversations, and how much will guys talk about that? And he said, I don't know, probably a lot. And that was where it was kind of left with him. So very interesting, to hear him say that. He then almost immediately after went on to talk about Jason Tatum and how special their relationship is. So cue the Bradley Beal to Boston Celtics photoshops and memes and all these other things that'll go on for the next couple of days with this, because then Tatum was interviewed right after Beal and talked about how that's his big brother, that's his mentor, and he looks up to him, and just how special it is, the two of them. If you don't know the background, they both went to the same high school and grew up in the same part of St. Louis. So he's Beal's a few years older than Tatum, but has known Tatum his whole life, and those guys are very, very close. And talked about how important it was to play together in the All-Star game last year, and now again here on Team USA. So I don't by any means say this is a lock. Beal's going to Boston, and I would never suggest that. But I think Beal is at least owning those conversations are going to happen this summer.
Yeah, it's only natural, but you know what? Adds a little bit more fuel to the hype train as we start to figure out where Bradley Beal could go in the future if and when the Wizards decide to trade him. But let's talk.
And sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
Let's be clear with Bradley Beal too. At the end of their season, every year he has said, I want to be here. This is where I want to be. I don't want to go anywhere else. This year, he basically said, I don't know. We'll see. That's a conversation we'll have to have. So for the first time ever, he left a little bit of an opening of, maybe this could be different. Beal is under contract for this upcoming season at $34.5 million. So pretty big number, but again, not impossible, right? We see all the time teams put these trade packages together. And then he has a $37.3 million player option for 22-23 that we can feel pretty good he's going to opt out of, because that'll be his last chance at a big contract once again. He is, let me check. I checked before when I show. Yeah, he just turned 28 years old at the end of June. So 29, so he'll be 30 before the start of that season where that player option is due. And we know that even though it's gotten better, the stigma is still out there with guards over 30 and all those things. So that's probably his chance at one more max deal, whether that's with the Wizards or somebody else. We'll see from that front. So yeah, it's going to be really kind of interesting to see what happens here. And one other thing, whether it be Beal or somebody else, when they get to Japan, this is not normal Olympics where a lot of times, we'd see guys go and take in other events and
Right.
those kind of things. These guys are going to be very isolated to themselves. They're going to be, just them. A lot of them are not bringing their families and, their entourages with them or any of that stuff. It's going to be just kind of them hanging out, the USA basketball team together. And that'll probably lead to more conversation than even usual we get on that. So just a couple more things to kind of keep in mind as we think about Beal specifically.
Yeah, because what else are they going to talk about? And you know what? Look, Bradley Beal. The rumors have been flying for, it feels like forever now, that he's going to get moved. If he decides that he wants to get moved, now is kind of the time to do it, right? I mean, you look at it, and again, his contract, he really only has 1 year left. That player option for one more year probably isn't going to get picked up. So this is where he has a little bit of influence in where he goes, because he can go to the Wizards and say, look, I want to go to these 5 teams. If you try to trade me, I'm just saying 5 out of the blue. If you try to trade me anywhere else that I don't want to go, I should say, then I'm just going to tell them, look, you get me for a year and then I'm gone. And then I'll leave as a free agent. And that will probably depress whatever one of those teams that he doesn't want to go to would give up for him. So he does have the ability to influence his landing spot a little bit right now. And we have seen players do that in the past. Specifically, of course, we all think of Anthony Davis. So this is going to be an interesting situation to monitor. Like, how do these conversations go with Team USA? And does that push Beal finally to a point where he says, you know what? I'm not going to win with the Wizards. I want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's in does he get moved this year? That's maybe a little tough unless he really goes to the Wizards and says, within the next couple of weeks here,
You'd
like,
have to say
I want to be somewhere else. That gets maybe a little complex, but I think this could open the idea that in 2022, he gets moved. And does that give Washington more impetus to move him if he's kind of laying the groundwork for, hey, I might be talking about teaming up with one of these guys I'm playing with here on Team USA? Does then Washington look at it and say, hey, well then we want to get something before you go? Let's figure that out, and that could turn into a complex situation too, because if you're not the team he wants to go to ultimately when he's a free agent, how much do you give up for him? Those kind of things. So I think that's going to be something to monitor. But let's talk about other trade noise, I guess is the best way to put it. Jonathan Givony, one of the top, if not the top guy around the NBA draft, Draft Express, ESPN, he knows, everything really plugged in, reported just the other day that the Pistons are open to moving the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And the teams that Givony said that that have at least inquired about moving up to number 1 are the Cleveland Cavaliers, Houston Rockets, New Orleans Pelicans, and Oklahoma City Thunder. So a couple teams immediately behind the Pistons, presumably we would be moving up to get Cade Cunningham, is what we're thinking. And then the Pelicans a little bit further down. That one's kind of interesting. And then the Thunder, who, we've talked about this before on this show. If anybody wants to say, hey, here's 15 picks for us to move up 5 slots in the draft, it's the Thunder who can pull that off.
So, and there is an added benefit here to where if they do decide to move back in the draft, the Pistons would actually save a little bit of money. So let's say you go to the Thunder, right? And you say, hey, we want to trade back a few spots. Well, that might save you a few million there, but then you pick up a future first there. So, and I'm not saying they're in a tough spot in terms of salary cap or anything, but there is that little bit of a benefit to where if you are the Pistons, the reason why you do this is if you believe that the player that you would get at number 1 or the player you think is the top of your board will be there wherever you trade back. Or if you just feel like there's 5 guys, 3 guys, 4 guys, however many guys it is, you feel like you'd get the same quality by trading back and you can pick up some extra value. Keith, we go back to the Celtics trade with the 76ers, the Markelle Fultz trade, dropping back to get Jason Tatum. They were able to fall back a couple of spots, pick up a future asset, and still get the guy who they felt was the top pick. And in hindsight, that definitely worked out. So this isn't necessarily...
And
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but because you mentioned it about saving money on the draft
Yeah.
slot for the Celtics, that was huge in that summer where they went down and got Gordon Hayward
Right.
and then got Kyrie Irving. They needed every bit of salary cap flexibility that they could possibly carve out, and they were able to do that. Even more so by moving back and lopping a couple million off that first year salary slot. For example, just to throw it out there,
Yeah.
it's about 10 million. Was what the number one overall pick will get, whether that's the Pistons or otherwise. In Oklahoma City spot at number 6, it's about 6 million. So it's about $4 million difference. So that's not a
Nothing.
different. That's not nothing, especially if you're the Pistons and you were looking to maybe go the salary cap route this off season or something like that. That could be a pretty big difference.
So, Keith, one of the things that we've mentioned, though, here on this channel is that this time of year, things come out for a reason. So, do you think
Yeah.
that part of this is one of these teams putting this out there? Is this Detroit putting this out there? Like, hey, not only are we considering moving this, but there's a number of teams already interested. So, if you want to get in on this bidding, make sure you put in your offer right now. Or what? How do you see this?
Yeah, with the draft, it gets really
It
funny
really
compared
does.
to like a player rumor. Because what happens is it could be the Pistons who are saying, hey, look at all this interest. You got to really pony up if you want to move up to number one. It could be one of these other teams just trying to say, hey, we're interested in moving up. It could be a team that's sitting 2, 3, 4. So that's what Cleveland, Houston, and Toronto. Maybe really liking somebody like Jalen Green and leaking out there. Hey, all these teams are trying to move up to 1 to get Cade Cunningham. We'll be sitting there ready to move up to 2 to get Jalen Green. The draft just presents it slightly differently because there's so much intrigue and everyone's really involved. So that becomes a very interesting thing to monitor and watch. But yeah, it's again, though, we're 22 days out from the draft,
Mhm.
a little over 3 weeks. So this kind of thing, if it's going to happen, probably a week out from the draft at most. And if you're Detroit, some have suggested they may not be fully sold on Cade Cunningham as the best player, that some are thinking Jalen Green maybe is there. If you're looking at it and saying, well, you know what, Houston wants to come up to 1 from 2 to get him, and they're willing to, well, Houston's probably not a great example because they owe some future first,
Right.
but they're willing to throw in 20, what do they have, 22 and or 16 and 18, 22 and 20. I know they have picks later in the first
Yeah.
round. If they want to throw those picks in, or if they want to do something else, throw in a player that maybe we kind of like off that team, and they want to come up, we'll go back and we'll draft Jalen Green ourselves. And now we're in a different position. There's not as much overlap positionally with maybe Jeremy Grant as there might be otherwise, and those kind of things. I think it's premature for Detroit to be thinking about position overlap right now in the phase they're in. But we've seen Troy Weaver is aggressive. He's the only guy left. He took over less than a year ago because remember we're in the weird offseason timing
Right.
here. The only guy left from the roster when he took over is Sekou Doumbouya. Everybody else he brought in at some point during the course of this year. It was Doumbouya and Blake Griffin were the last two standing, and Griffin went, and that was it. So yeah, I think we could see him take an approach that seems a little how do I say, a little atypical.
Yeah.
Of normally it's if you're at 1, you sit at 1, but if they're thinking, hey, we can get a guy we still like and add to a stash of picks going forward, why not make that move?
Yeah, look, if they feel like there is similar talent to be had later on in the draft, you might as well. You might as well add to your assets and move back and then get somebody else. And again, you get that added benefit too of the salary cap relief where you're paying that pick a little bit less, and that can add up. Over the years that can definitely add up over the life of that rookie contract. So that can be a bit of a factor as well. But Keith, here's the challenge though with this. And I do wonder how often GMs really think about this. You look at the Luka and Trae Young trade, right, that the Hawks and the Mavs made. Those two players will now be forever linked. Same thing with Jason Tatum and Marco Fultz, where executives are worried about, hey, if I make the wrong pick, people are always going to say, oh, you could have had that guy instead, right? And that's just the nature of the draft. But if you swap back, right, or if you give up assets to trade up, those two specific players will always be compared to each other to determine who wins the trade, who loses the trade. And so you've got to
Yep.
be pretty convinced that you're doing the right thing because you're really kind of putting your neck out there. Because if you make the wrong, you end up on the wrong side of that trade, people are always going to remember that, particularly if it involves a player who becomes a superstar.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You better get it right because if you get it wrong, you're probably not going to be there very long
Yep.
making decisions, as we saw with Brian Colangelo. Wasn't there, and Luke and trade that was ended up a win-win.
Right.
I think both sides are pretty happy with that trade. And then, yeah, I mean, Danny Ainge just retired, but he clearly won that deal in that trade there. So, yeah, it really is one of those things where you better make the right decision because if you move off one and Cade Cunningham goes first overall, then becomes this multi-time all-star, all-NBA level guy, you're probably in trouble
Yeah.
because the chances of the guy you draft being just as good are probably pretty slim. It usually doesn't go that way. So you better really nail it if you're going to make that kind of move. So we'll see. But I think Troy Weaver's shown he might be the kind of guy who will do that kind of maneuver. Just because I think he's but what do the kids say? He's built different.
Built different.
Let's just say that he's built different.
Keith, every time I hear his name out loud, Troy Weaver, I'm expecting Junior to come at the end because I've watched that terrible movie Draft Day way too many times.
No, it's not terrible. I love that movie.
It's one. It's a terrible.
I would pay $50 for an NBA version.
Oh,
Easy.
I would too.
Easy,
I would love for
doubt.
an NBA version, absolutely. Yeah. But it's a terrible movie in terms of the premise, right? Of the way the trade actually breaks down, the way the whole thing works.
Killing me.
Like it's ridiculous. But don't get me wrong. I watch the movie every year on Draft Day. That's why I can say it. I mean, come on. You look at the way that trade really, really happened.
I want my picks back.
Yeah, all of them. Oh.
Enjoy your pancakes. I love that movie. This Draft Day slander. Guys, if the NBA front office YouTube channel ends with this episode, now you know why. We might have hit a breaking point. This might be the thing we've disagreed on most vehemently since I've known you. Well, no, I love that movie.
Again, it's like a guilty pleasure movie, but here's my sticking point with it, and I know
should have won an Oscar.
Come on. But okay. So he trades to get number one, right? And at the end of the day, you trade up. You're going to pay Vontae Mack way more than you ever had to pay him if he had just stayed at 7 all along.
Vontae Mack, no matter what.
And then he gives up 3 second rounders to get 7 back. So what really changed? What really changed at the end of the day is you're paying Vontae Mack more, and you traded away 3 second rounders to get Ray Jennings and what was it? Brian G.
David Putney.
David
to return kicks.
David G.D. Putney, just because I feel like it, right? Like that's
it.
That's what you gave up for. Like, was that really that great of a day for them at the end? Yeah. I don't know.
And you kept your quarterback happy. You made it back from his knee injury. Man, I don't know. And the Browns are good again in real life. I think it all came together just like Sonny Weaver Jr. planned it to.
Just like he planned it out. All right, guys. This
R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman, man.
Absolutely.
What a role.
He was fantastic in that movie. He was probably the best part of that movie.
No doubt.
All right. we went off the rails, but I hope you guys enjoyed talking about Draft Day a little bit. But give us your thoughts on Bradley Beal, that situation with Team USA. Could we be seeing another super team get formed? It could happen this summer. And then let us know your thoughts on the Detroit Pistons moving the number 1 overall pick. And if you have any thoughts on the movie Draft Day, if you think it is a cinematic masterpiece like Keith does, or if you think the trade negotiations were a mess like I do, let us know in the comments section down below. Till next time, everybody. See ya. Stay safe.